window, the Christ the King window with the cross and the crown. And if you look at this window carefully, it's really very interesting. There are some round jewel-like pieces, and this window was typical of what was fashionable in the 1880s. Sue and I got a wedding present with that cross and crown, only had a scallop border. And I had to have a cabinet maker make a surround to hold that glass. And it cost $200. And when we got married, it was so long ago that $200 was a small fortune. And I told Sue, a few more gifts like this and we won't be able to afford to get married. But we still have it, and I still love it. This window was then installed where the Trinity window had been. And then in 1887, December 7th, Myrtie and Kate died in New Orleans. She had been in fragile health for years. And they used to think it was tuberculosis, and now they think maybe it was a heart problem. But in any event, when she died, the Kate family decided that they would like to replace that window with a memorial window to their mother. And as I can't recall it, but I've got it on my notes over here, but you can walk up and see the inscription, and it's her family, her children, that rose up and memorialized their mother, who really was an extraordinary woman. I'm hoping later this year to do a talk on Mrs. Kate. Some of her papers have recently been given to the archives at Southeastern, and I've been waiting to see those papers for about 50 years. And I'm anxious to go through them. But she was a sainted individual. Now, the thing that makes the windows in this church so extraordinary is the fact that they were designed and installed over a 150-year period. So they represent all sorts of different styles of stained glass. There was an Episcopal priest who visited us back in the 1950s, and he was the chaplain at Duke University. And when he came into the church, he was awed by the windows. And he said, "Do you realize what an extraordinary collection of stained glass that you have here?" And it has continued. We had a priest who came here in the start of 1941, and his name was Howard Gary. And Howard Gary was interested in stained glass, and he wanted to remove the yellow glass diamonds and put pictorial windows in those places. And so I wanted to mention him because he deserves credit. because at least 4, if not 5, of these windows were installed because he was concerned and interested and wanted to create it. I call this a jewel box, because you sit in here at worship and you're looking at this wonderful color, and it induces reflection and meditation, and we are very fortunate to have it. When you get up to walk around and look at the windows, window number 1 in the narthex shows a shell with water pouring out of it. Our baptismal font is right at the end of this aisle, and it stands there, and the priest stands by it, and the godparents are there with the parents and the person being baptized. And the priest takes a silver shell and pours holy water onto the person being baptized. And so that shell in the window in the narthex, in our entry, signifies the entrance into the church, because we celebrate all baptized believers, and they are welcomed at our altar. The window in the narthex is pure glass. If you look at a lot of the other windows, you'll see that they are painted. They've been painted over the colored glass. The window with Christ in the Easter lilies was installed in 1909. And so it's one of our older windows. And a number of years ago, we had to have the window removed and sent to New York, and they repainted the face of Jesus and his hands. I wish they'd done a little something for the Easter lilies. But in any case, that's an earlier style of stained glass window. I would like now to talk to you a little bit about the people that are memorialized by the windows. This church, when it opened, it was called Grace Chapel. And behind me on this chair is a silver chalice. And Mother Liz located this in our safe. And I've been here for more than 50 years, and I've never seen this chalice before the other day when she showed it to me. And you're welcome to come up here and look at it. And it's engraved Grace Chapel. And it was Grace Chapel until the family of Mrs. Kate decided that they wanted to put a window in honoring their mother. And it then became Grace Memorial Episcopal Church. It cost $7,500 to build. And when you think of how long ago that was, and the fact that about 10 men actually built this place, and look at the cornice work and the ornamentation over the windows, all in plaster. Some years ago, we had a piece of plaster fall about right where I'm standing, and when it came down, it was 4 inches thick. So we had to resurface the whole ceiling because it could truly be a way to your final rest if you got hit with a piece of falling plaster. Let me, using your, and let me mention one other thing. On this chair, I have mounted one of the original wooden shingles that roofed this structure. And some years ago, there were bees up there. Some men in the church went up there with a beekeeper to capture the bees. And they found all these wooden shingles and a lot of square nails, because that's what they used when this church was built. And so one of our parishioners gathered up a bunch of shingles and several handfuls of square nails, and he made square nail crosses mounted on the shingles and sold them for $25. $25 when Dr. Poles was peddling shingles, used shingles, was a lot of money. And I spent it, and I've treasured it ever since. And this shingle is 150 years old. And if you look at it carefully, and I'm going to move this tile over, at the bottom of the shingle when you come up here, you'll see that it's worn because that's where the rain and so forth hit it. But then the next row of shingles went down to here, and so it covered the upper part. So the upper part of the shingle is fine, but it's the lower part that was worn. And it's an interesting relic of our church's past. I'm now going to stop, and I want to make one other comment, and then I'll start talking about the people. If you go to our neighbor over here, Holy Ghost Catholic Church, the new church, you'll see a magnificent collection of stained glass by a very talented artist who was originally from Hammond, I believe, named Steve Wilson, who practices or maintains his shop in Baton Rouge today. But it's all clearly done by the same person in the same color scheme and so forth. And our series of windows were established well over time. And so without further ado, I'm going to go over here and start talking to you on using your map as a guide. The baptism window in the narthex features the shell, as I've said, and the Neelis, it honors Buford and Hattie Neelis. The Neelis family had a large business on the other side of the railroad track on Kate Street, and it was called the Neelis Emporium. And according to the census of 1920, Hattie Neelis Timms was a bookkeeper. I'm assuming she kept books. Mr. Carter was a Presbyterian. He's the only non-Episcopalian in our windows. He had 2 wives. The first wife died, and he married again, and he married a woman named Ruth Corbin, the daughter of Catherine Corbin. And they had a son together, Charles Congreve Carter II, although I always knew him as Connie and did not know that he was the second. Mrs. Corbin had 5 children of her own. And her brother, who's in the next window, was Ben Morrison, who owned a produce and mercantile enterprise and built Hammond's first 3-story building on Thomas Street. And it had Hammond's first elevator. It was a freight elevator to move things, and you could get everything from a cradle to a coffin at Morrison's. Morrison had a son, James Hobson Morrison, and James Hobson Morrison was elected to Congress and served 12 terms in the House of Representatives. I used to dread talking to Jimmy when he would say, when I was in Congress, because he was in Congress for so long. His story usually was the same. He said that when he was at Tulane as an undergraduate, he dreaded summer because he'd come up here and his father bought things like potatoes in carload lots. And in the summer, he and other employees of the firm would sit in the boxcar and bag potatoes so that they could be taken by wagon over to the store and sold to customers. Jimmy Morrison had 2 sisters. The next window is the Annunciation. So they're a little out of order, obviously. But there you see the angel telling Mary that she is going to have a son, and that the son is a gift from God. And below you see her cousin Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist. And there is the Holy Ghost, the symbol of the dove, coming down and touching Mary on the head. I've already talked to you. Oh, this window was given by the Benson family. And actually, Mrs. Benson came here from I'm not sure where, and she had 3 children. One was a son, and the son became successful here, and he lived out in Pleasant Ridge, in that area off the old Covington Highway. And the election precinct there was called the Benson Box. One of the Benson children married into the Lanier family. And so it was a gift of Mr. Benson and his sister, who married a Lanier. And the next window is the cross and crown, and I've already talked to you about that, but it is one of our older glass windows. After Murdy Kate died in December of 1887, her family decided they wanted to install a window in memory of Murdy Kate, who was really the moving force behind the building of this chapel. And so they got the church to agree to move the cross and crown from over the altar to behind the choir, or at least that's where the choir is today. They switched organ and choir some years back. But this Good Shepherd window is, I think, an extraordinarily beautiful rendering of Christ, the Good Shepherd. And noticing he's holding a lamb. And our priest has very small children, and she occasionally picks up one of her smaller daughter and picks her up and stands there, and there are 2 lambs near the altar. Excuse me. I got it. Sorry about that. That's okay. This window was removed. That window was removed to make room for this window, and it was done in 1888. So it's an old window as well. The window behind the altar, behind the organ, this is our organ console right here. And behind it is the sacred music window. And if you look at it carefully, you'll see there are 2 figures blowing shofars. And a shofar was a ram's horn. And Jewish services still occasionally feature the blowing of the shofar. If you look carefully at the window, you will see there are other instruments as well, including a drum, a lyre, and I've forgotten the others, but when you come over and look at it, you can see for yourself. And it is in honor of the Green family and the Selby, Mrs. Selby, whose first name I don't know, but Mrs. Selby, I think, was a Green and married Selby. Mrs. Green conducted the choir for years. Mrs. Selby was active in the choir for many years. And the quality of the music in this church is extraordinary. We have a violinist, a classical organist who teaches at Tulane and who is just a gift from God granted to us. And I think she's here. But in any case, the music window was put in, I would think, in the 70s, the 1970s, but I'm not sure. The window over the portal into the office has been there for a number of years now, but it's only since we began this project that you could see it. Because the lighting that we had established to illuminate the window from the back never was satisfactory. And when we started this window project, one of my goals was to make it possible to see this window. The window represents two Carters. Ruth Carter, whose husband was the Presbyterian and whose mother was Mrs. Katie Corbin. She was a Corbin, Ruth Corbin, married to Mayor Carter. She died in 1967. Her grandson, Charles Congreve Carter III, was the son of the man who went to the Naval Academy, was Charles Carter II. It's his son who is honored in this window. And he and his wife gave this window to celebrate his mother, Ruth Corbin Carter, and his son, Charles Carter III. Charles Carter III had gone to LSU, graduated, got a job in New Orleans and commuted, and he was in a terrible accident on the road to New Orleans, and after a long, torturous illness, died. And so the Corbin Carter family is very well represented in the windows of Grace Memorial. I've already talked to you briefly about the 1909 Christ in the Lilies window. I'm not sure what the name is on the, let me see here. Christ with Easter lilies. And It's interesting that the pictorial portion is in the middle, and then there's a large pattern section at the upper third of that window. And then the next window is the resurrection. And the resurrection honors Harriet Mooney. And Harriet Mooney was the sister of Murdy Kate. And Harriet Mooney was the first postmaster of Hammond, but she only served for about 6 months, and then her husband took over. And they had a house where 113 restaurant is now, and the house faced the corner, so it was not facing either street but the intersection. And her husband was the first mayor of Hammond, Henry Clay Mooney, and they're buried out here. Most of these people are in our cemetery, which is properly called a graveyard, but we still call it Grace Memorial Cemetery. When you have graves around the church, it's a graveyard, but we're not being academic about this. The other side of that window back there, and I can't remember, is the daughter of Harriet Mooney. And she grew up in this church, and she taught Sunday school, and then she also used a mop and a broom because the early church couldn't afford janitorial staff. And you don't think about those basic realities when you look back at things like that. But bless her heart, she kept us clean in her time. She also was a fine Sunday school teacher. And then the next window is, if you look behind you, window number 12. Suffer the little children to come unto me, for of such is the kingdom of heaven. That window, and I think it's just spectacular, is very special. Originally, the gift from Christ Church, New Orleans, stood in that place. And it honors Lou Kate Dameron. Lou Kate was the daughter of Murdy Kate and Charles Emery Kate. And her children and her grandchildren wanted to honor Lou Kate Dameron. Mr. Dameron was a railroad executive in New Orleans, and they were the first wedding in this church. And they moved, and they lived in New Orleans, and when her mother became seriously ill, she went to stay with daughter Lou Kate and her husband at their house in New Orleans, where there was better medical assistance. And she her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren wanted a window for her. And so they got the church vestry to agree to take out the original window that's now at the end of our parish hall, and to have a window fabricated for that opening. And notice it's got the double I can't think of the word for it, at the top. And what's particularly interesting to me is that there are two girls at the lower end of that. The one to the left is still alive, Suzanne Kate Dameron. And the girl on the other side at the bottom with the long hair was Murdy Kate Dameron. She's deceased. That gives you a rundown of the windows. There is a St. George's Cross in the office on the door going toward the parish hall, and then of course that spectacular big window from Christ Church in New Orleans. But it represents a remarkable collection of really beautiful, worship-affirming glass. And we have been honored by our forebearers with this beauty. When you begin your wandering around, note the shingle and the chalice, and there's also a little square tile. And that square tile represents the quilt square that's mounted outside of Durkee Hall, our office building. I hope that this has offered you some insight into the remarkable heritage that has developed over 150 years. Yes, ma'am.
Do we know why, originally, where the name Grace came from for the church?
I couldn't hear
Where
you.
the name Grace came from for the church.
I think that grace is just a common word, and I have no inkling of where the grace for Grace Chapel came from. But I'm grateful because I'm counting on it. Well, thank you for your kind attention.